on your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock. The authorities in the United States say they're searching for a man of college age following the killing of the right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. The FBI's released an image of the man they want to question after finding the weapon which was used to shoot the 31-year-old at a university in Utah. LBC's Washington correspondent Simon Marks has been telling Iain Dale the investigation remains fluid.
Officials in Utah have postponed a news conference that they were supposed to be holding to update reporters on progress in the case, because they say there have been rapid developments as they continue to hunt for the suspect. So it may well be that during the course of tonight we get a lot more information.
Downing Street says the Prime Minister found the emails between Lord Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein reprehensible. He's been sacked as the British ambassador to Washington, D.C. The leaked communiques showed him offering support to the late paedophile while he was facing child sexual abuses charges. LBC's political correspondent Ali Aghi-Chambray says the Prime Minister is in a difficult position.
This raises questions about, why he was appointed in the first place. They say those emails were new, they weren't seen by the vetting process because this email account had been closed for years. But Labour MPs describing it to me today as another stab wound, talking about how difficult it is for Keir Starmer.
Investigations are underway in North London after a spate of attacks on Jewish premises. 7 have been targeted in the borough of Barnet over recent weeks. They include synagogues and a school. The Labour Party has confirmed 2 candidates have met the threshold of support needed to run for the post of deputy leader. Bridget Phillipson and Lucy Powell have made it onto the final shortlist following the resignation of Angela Rayner last Friday. And a burglar's been sent to prison for just over 6 years after stealing nearly £1.5 million worth of luxury watches from a shopping centre. David Buisson from Harlow took 159 of them from Bluewater at Dartford in February. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 72 points at 92.97. The pound will buy $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, wet and windy in the far northwest of the UK overnight. Clear, especially in the east, and feeling cool in the countryside with a low of around 8 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Tim Daly.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 8 on LBC. We're streaming this hour live on Global Player and the LBC app if you'd like to watch us. As you know, on a Thursday, we like to cover a particular issue or interview one person. Well, today we've got 2 people with us. Dame Andrea Leadsom, former Conservative Cabinet Minister, also former Public Health Minister, who's the founder of the new early years charity, the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. Welcome, Andrea. Good to see you in the studio again after all this time.
Yes.
And Kieran Anders is making his debut in the studio, I think, from the Father's Mental Health Focused charity Dad Matters UK. Welcome to you, Kieran.
Thanks, Ian. It's good to be here.
Now, let's start. Just remind people, first of all, Andrea, about your interest in the sort of the early days of childhood, because it's something that I was going to say you've been banging on about, but you've been arguing your case vociferously.
I really have.
For quite a few years.
Yeah, I remember in Cabinet being accused afterwards by the media of banging on about babies in Cabinet, and that is my proudest moment, I think. Not many people get to do that. But no, essentially, humans are unique in the animal kingdom in the extent of our underdevelopment at birth. If you think about a horse or an elephant, they're born, they get up and walk off. A human is born and then it lies there and it cries or it sleeps or it looks around. And so we are uniquely vulnerable. We're born about 2 years premature. So we utterly depend on loving adult carers to sort everything out for us until we can fend for ourselves. That means we're uniquely vulnerable and susceptible to what is around us. And for so many families, their own either lack of information, their youth, their fears and anxieties, their lack of support, sleeplessness, too much crying, poverty, addiction issues, all sorts of things that affect people. But essentially it's lack of information and lack of support. And so for me, for about the last 30 years, I've been banging on about the need, if we want every baby to have the best start for life, which by definition we must do, because they're the taxpayers of tomorrow, they're the people who are going to be sort of paying our pensions. So we want them to have a good start. So we want them to have that fulfilled, nurtured babyhood. And that's why the 1001 critical days is so critical.
Now, you were a government minister for many years in different departments. I mean, ending up at the Department of Health, where you could presumably influence this policy. But did you find over the years that there was a certain resistance within government, or within the machine of government, to doing a lot of the things that you were recommending?
Yes, I think there was. And to start with, when I was first an MP back in 2010, it was a bit the sort of, oh, it's nanny state, it's not for us to intervene in people's home life sort of thing. But actually, over the years, it has simply become that the government hasn't known what to do. And that's where really, 15 years as an MP, I've been trying to shape what we do to support new families. And I was delighted back in 2021 when we launched the vision for the 1001 days. What does good look like? I mean, Theresa May had me chair a Cross-Whitehall review into early years. That culminated in 2021 in a plan, which we've then been rolling out ever since. And I'm delighted that the new government is also continuing to expand the family hubs and Start for Life. So essentially what parents told us, they wanted information, they wanted universal services, and they wanted them in one place. So that is the family hub. It's like a one-stop shop for everything to do with your baby.
But isn't that exactly what Sure Start was designed to do back in the day?
Yeah, it sort of is. And I was a big fan of Sure Starts. That's when I first got involved, except that Sure Starts were very much 0 to 5. They didn't focus on antenatal. Some did, but for many, you didn't go there until your baby was born. There was a focus on targeted families. And you show me who's going to be a good parent. Okay, there's a correlation with certain amount of correlation with poverty and lack of education, but actually anyone can be a brilliant parent and anyone can be a terrible parent. That's the truth of it. And what every parent needs is the support and help to give their baby the best start. So Sure Starts, I would say, get 2 claps, and I have had this discussion with David Blunkett and Tessa Jowell before she passed away over the years, and what we all agreed is that you actually need wraparound support, so that one-stop shop where everything from your antenatal checks to your health visitor weighing to the parenting, antenatal classes, and really importantly, support for dads. And that's where Kieran comes in, because he represents Dad Matters, which is such a fantastic charity that's really trying to provide the support for new dads that is simply lacking in the whole of the perinatal space.
Well, let's bring Kieran into the conversation. Tell us more about Dad Matters UK. Is that something you set up?
So Dad Matters is a project. It's within Home Start UK, which is a nationwide federated charity. There's 177 local Home Start charities across the UK, all working with children 0 to 5, delivering all sorts of parenting support, perinatal support, it could be mental health, peer support, infant feeding, lots and lots of different charities, projects within the charity. Set Dad Matters up in 2017 in Tameside, in cooperation with the Early Attachment Service. So it was all about parent-infant relationships and the way that dads engage with their babies and support them and understand them and get to the point where the bond and the attachment with those babies is where it needs to be. So there's a lot of education, a lot of universal outreach. We meet dads in places where they already are. So scan clinics, birth registrations, neonatal units, places like that. We speak to them, we talk to them, we educate, we give resources, we support them to understand what their babies need. We're really a baby service. We're a baby project that is targeting dads to help dads to understand babies better.
So what got you into this?
I've always been really interested. I used to work for Sure Starts back in the day, delivering on kind of local programmes, and I've been in education and early years and youth work for a long time. And as a dad myself, I had some struggles when my kids were little, when they were first born. I've experienced loss, I've experienced traumatic birth. I've had lots of support around me from my dad in particular, my uncle Andy, were the only people really that asked me how I was, and really gave me some pointers, some role modelling of what it could be like to help me to get through the difficult times.
Is loneliness a factor here where I mean, look, I've never been a dad, but I can imagine that in some
circumstances.
No, I really shouldn't. I can, apart from to 2 dogs, I can imagine that it's the mother-baby bonding is a sort of unique thing, and I think the father-baby bonding can be a unique thing, but it's always been the tradition in sort of Christian society that it's the mother that takes on the leading parental role. Now that is, I think, very different nowadays, but not all the time. And fathers can feel excluded, and I suspect that's what may be one of the main things that you're dealing with.
Exclusion is massive. Isolation from services, from family, from relationships with your baby are all a key factor in whether or not dads do step up and do build that bond with their baby and have that relationship. But we know through evolution, men have evolved to be caring dads and responsive to their children's needs. And often society means that dads don't have the opportunities to do that, whether that's not enough time at home, whether that's too much time at work. It could be gatekeeping from services. It could be a lack of education. So there's lots of reasons why dads can feel isolated. But actually, a lot of dads don't realise that that's happening, and so they just get on with their life without questioning. What we want to do is really educate dads to understand the benefits of being involved, being responsive to your child and what they need.
Yeah, and going into what's in it for the baby, there is now a wealth of research that shows that a baby that's securely attached to mum is 50% prize. A baby that's securely attached to dad is about 40% prize, but a baby that's securely attached to both parents is an 80% prize. And that, dads play a unique role in their baby's life. Dads play with their babies differently to the way, mums are much more nurturing traditionally, whereas dads will be more fun, but also more reassuring. And so mums and dads do play uniquely different roles, but complementary. And the big win for the baby is when both parents, whether it's, same-sex parents or opposite sex parents, when there are 2 parents, that is a unique win for the baby.
There's just been this study from Swansea University, which I guess it's come out to coincide with World Suicide Prevention Day, which was yesterday. They have found, and this is the research was commissioned by by your foundation.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's revealed 2 to 3 babies lose their fathers to suicide every week across the
shocking.
UK. Now, I mean, when I saw that, I really was genuinely surprised and shocked. Why?
Well, that is a very big question, and bottom line is we don't exactly know why yet, but what we do know is more men die by suicide than women. We also do know, however, that suicide is a major cause of death in early motherhood too. However, the stats are that men are 7 times more likely to die by suicide when their baby's under 2 than women are. We also know, slightly counterintuitively, that having a baby can be a protective measure. So if you had suicidal thoughts, it could lead you to not die by suicide as a result of having a baby. So there's a lot more to be unpacked there. But actually, I think that the 2 takeaways I would say from this that we can absolutely clearly see is that, number 1, there needs to be much more data about dads. So this study is only in Wales. It's not routinely recorded in England, Scotland or Northern Ireland as to the ages of children of a man who dies by suicide. So the first thing is recording is absolutely critical, and I'm calling on the government here and around the world to start recording this data. And then the second thing is that specialist parent, infant and perinatal mental health services are available now to mums, but simply not to dads. And so the second thing I'm calling for is that perinatal mental health services must be made available to dads.
And Kieran, 8 to 13% of fathers are thought to experience depression during pregnancy and early parenthood. Now, again, is that because, or partly because of the responsibility that men feel as traditionally the breadwinners again, this is less so nowadays, but being able to provide for their family?
certainly expectation of becoming a father is part of it, in the same way that it is for mums. I think one of the things that we know more about now is that men do have biological and psychological changes when they become dads. Things like
Really?
testosterone levels change. Testosterone levels drop when you have a baby and have close contact with the baby.
Why?
It's an evolutionary mechanism that helps dads and babies to bond and have that relationship. There's other hormones as well that change. That can make you feel a different way or behave a different way. And dads don't know that this is happening. We know about it with mums, and we look out for those signs and symptoms. We want dads to know that happens too, so that when they do feel differently or they do behave differently, they can explore that with the professionals around them and get support. And there's lots of other social aspects to it. The same things that affect mums, like sleepless nights, responsibility, finances, housing, all of those things are still the same. So we know that dads can suffer with postnatal depression. Diagnosis is difficult because often dads are not identified as dads, they're identified as men with depression. And so diagnosis might go under the radar. So that figure that you've quoted is probably lower than we would expect it to be. And there's also anxiety, which affects dads more antenatally, where there is more worry about what's going to happen. There's a little bit more of that psychosomatic symptoms, so things like indigestion or random pains or headaches, things like that men are more likely to experience.
Random thought that just occurred to me, that if you recognise that you're struggling in whatever way as a young father, maybe an older father, maybe that's a phenomenon as well we should talk about. But if you go for counselling, I wonder how many psychotherapists are trained to recognise sort of the symptoms, if that's the right word, of depression among young fathers, and actually diagnose, well, it is because of that rather than something else that's going on in their lives.
There's not many. But I think there are great teams out there, parent-infant mental health teams, who work with mums and dads, and they are really good at identifying what those issues are and really providing clinical pathways for support as well. The difficulty is engaging dads into those interventions, getting the dads in front of those clinicians that can help.
Because they automatically think, no, I'm a man, I don't need that sort of thing. There's a sort of macho aspect to it.
Often, or there's an avoidance of the feelings. So they might get distracted by other things, or they might distract themselves from the feelings of disappointment or depression or whatever that might be. So avoidance is a massive part of that as well.
Yeah, we found with the rollout of the family hubs and the Start for Life programme that for a lot of the services that were offered to new potential parents, the dads only really wanted to engage online. They didn't really want to turn up to a family hub space and actually be there in person. And that's fine. But actually trying to engage with dads at all, quite often, in my experience, dads feel, well, it's not about me, it's about her and the baby. I don't want to be selfish. I can't ask for help for me, because that would be very, very selfish. And there are a few people who've talked about that. There's a podcaster, Elliot Ray, who's talked a lot about his own experience of PTSD when his wife was in emergency cesarean, and he was the one that got PTSD, but he didn't feel he could talk to anyone about it. And I think for so many men, that's the trouble, is they don't want it to be about them.
A friend of mine went through a very traumatic birthing situation. His wife wanted to have a what's it called, and when you have the birth in a hydra birth. So she went to the local place where they do that, and it all went a bit wrong, and she had to then go in an ambulance to the hospital, which was about 20-30 minutes away. He was left with the baby. Ugh. And they said, well, you'll just have to take her in the car. And he said, well, how can I do that? And so, and all this time he didn't know what was happening with his wife, because, and then he got to the hospital, and the midwife who had accompanied his wife in the ambulance told him just outright, we nearly lost her. Now imagine the psychological effect of that. Yeah. Now my friend, he's a strong guy, but I mean, listening to what you were saying there, I'm thinking, I mean, if you have 10 people go through that situation, I suspect there'd be a couple of them that were just completely traumatised by the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, luckily the baby survived and she's doing well and all the rest of it, but
that trauma can really lead to more difficulties.
Yeah.
And I think that what we find is a pattern is a lot of dads don't feel that they own that story. It belongs to their partner and they don't feel that they can share that with other people. So when people do ask them, if a midwife or a health visitor asks them about the labour, they'll say, oh yeah, I'm okay. My partner wasn't okay, and they'll talk about their partner's experiences rather than their own.
Yeah.
And what we try and do is be really direct with them and ask them about their own and be very direct and curious about answers.
Well, I suspect that there are many fathers, whether you're a young father or maybe a little bit more mature, who are listening to this thinking, yeah, they're talking about me, or they're talking about something I went through 20 years ago. If that is you, we'd love to hear from you. If you've got questions you'd like to put to Andrea and to Kieran, 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Phil says, what a wonderful use of radio. I had no idea men's testosterone drops after they become a father. This is fascinating and explains so much. Thank you all. Phil in Inverness. Well, there you go.
Good.
You've affected one person at least.
Yeah, no, that it is so important. And actually the number of rooms of sort of like a dinner party or, completely inappropriate time where I've said, if you have a baby and you're closely attached to your baby, your testosterone levels drop, and all the guys, their mouths are like, really? And everyone's fascinated by that one factoid. And of course it has huge consequences for men. And men don't want to look after themselves because they're trying to look after their partner. They're being, and that is, in a way, particularly in the horrendous case of the suicides we've talked about, when a man doesn't look after himself to the point where he does away with himself, that is a disaster for the mum, for the baby. It's a disaster for the whole family.
I mean, can I ask this? Well, I'm going to. If you are a mother who has lost your partner or your husband because of the kind of things that Andrea and Kieran have been saying, if you'd like to tell us your story, please give us a call. If you don't want to use your real name, that's fine as well. But I just have a feeling that every single call that we're going to get in this hour, and we've already got some on the board, every single call is going to mean something to somebody else. And I always say in these hours, if you have a story to tell, you're not going to be alone. There'll be other people that have gone through exactly the same thing. It's 22 minutes past 8.
LBC. Iain Dale on LBC.
23 minutes past 8. Dame Andrea Leadsom is here, former Conservative Cabinet Minister. She's founder of the new early years charity, the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. And Kieran Anders is here from the Father's Mental Health Focused charity, Dad Matters UK. Now, in the break there, I was going to say Dame Andrea. You were telling me about what the foundation is doing in terms of giving grants to charities, funding research. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have our basic mission is that every baby should experience the best start for life, and we're going to be doing 3 things. One is grant funding charities that are delivering support that provides better outcomes for babies, and we've just announced an award to Dad Matters of £1 million over the next 5 years so that they can roll out Dad Matters through home starts around the UK. So that's the first thing, is grant funding charities. The second thing is we're commissioning groundbreaking research around the world into what works to provide better outcomes for babies, and the research into suicide by dads is a early part of that, and we'll be looking at research into things like the infant gut biome and the benefits of breast milk, into the impact of screens on babies, either their parents' use of it or babies' use of it, and various other pieces of research around the world. And then the third thing we'll be doing is we'll be advocating around the world for the 1001 critical days, and our early priority countries are Norway, the UAE and South Africa.
Why?
I knew you'd ask that. Norway, because
I'd have thought Norway could look after itself.
Well,
frankly.
there you are, you see. Interesting. Norway have a 1001 days charity of their own. We were there just recently. They worry that Norway is too prescriptive about the parent-infant relationship and not sufficiently nurturing. So we're working with them on improving that. The UAE, because they've recently, with their Ministry for the Family, which is a new ministry, they've decided early years is really critical. And South Africa, because it's global south. And Cyril Ramaphosa, as president of G20, has said that early years is a top priority for South Africa because of the extent of violence that so many young people have grown up in. Actually, education and support for new parents is absolutely crucial.
Right, I don't normally come to calls until after past in these hours, but we've got quite a lot coming in and quite a lot of texts as well. Here's one from Matt, who says, I'm a dad of a now 3-year-old. I found it very hard for the first 2 years. I think I have the answer as to why this happens. I felt the pressure of being the working breadwinner, the modern expectations from the woman, plus all the normal changes that happen that you don't know are coming. It was awful. I still feel guilty. I wasn't my best, even now. Is that typical, Kieran?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not typical that he recognises what the struggles were. A lot of dads struggle and don't ever reflect on what's happening. I think it's great that he's been able to spot that. But yeah, it's typical that all of those things, they make a bigger picture, and you react and behave in a way that doesn't feel normal. And often dads don't think that it's because they're a parent. They try and find something else that is the reason. Men are very practically focused as well. They'll look for a thing that can fix it rather than sitting with it, reflecting on it, speaking about it. They'll try and fix it by doing something, and that doesn't often work.
Right, let's go to a call. Tom is in New Cross in South London. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Ian. Good evening. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. What would you like to say?
Plenty, I think.
Good.
Just to reflect back on that text that you just had from Matt, I can relate to that through and through. Just about me personally, I've got 2 children. I've got 2 boys. One is now coming up to 4. The other one's now coming up to 2. And my main experience is more to do with my first. And essentially, almost overnight, and it's not just to me as the dad, it's to the mother as well, our lives were turned upside down. You know, we were to, double income, no kids, to there's a child in your hands, good luck, and, I hope you get on with it. But the first thing I want to kind of touch on is that the paternity leave in this country is, for men, is shocking. I know that, dads have passed, my dad's generation, my dad took great pride in saying he had 1 day off work after I was born, and he went straight back to work. I know that 2 weeks now is better than what it was.
Must have made you feel so special, Tom.
but it's, the statutory is still 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks, I'm sorry, but that's absolutely no time for a dad to bond with their child, get used to life with a child, understand everything that comes along with it. I mean, with my first, I was ever so slightly lucky that he was born right before Christmas, so I managed to blag an extra week off after he was born. But I then, 3 weeks on, I'm back to work. I work a stressful job. I don't want to say exactly what I do, but I work in technology, so the pressure's always on. And I was the breadwinner. I was responsible for, making sure that the mortgage was paid, there's food on the table, it's warm in the house. I mean, after my son was born, the war in Ukraine started, so all energy bills went rocketing up, and that put a real financial strain. But I guess what the paternity leave is one. The other thing is that there are no dad groups, where there are none, because we're all expected back at work after 2 weeks. I've got a few of my former colleagues that live in Scandinavia, and I'm glad Norway was mentioned. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe in Norway, or at least in the Scandinavian countries, you get things like a baby box, and as part of their culture, children are celebrated. They're not a burden, they're the future. And mums and dads are supported so well, at least from my friends that I know are there. Like I know in Sweden, I think men get 6 to 12 months off. That's unheard of in the UK. And everyone, talks about all the positives of that. There are dad groups over there called, I believe it's called Lads and Lattes, where it's a men only. You go with your kids and you have a coffee and you have a piece of cake and you can relate to other people. But as a culture here in the UK, if I propose that to a group of lads, it's going to be, locker room talk if I even propose that. And I think it's a cultural shift, but then there needs to be support from central government. The birth rates are falling. Have they actually looked at why that might be? Because paternity leave and, current state of the world, I'm not surprised people aren't having kids. I wonder sometimes why I did it, but I want to throw it out there. I love my 2 boys to death. They are my absolute world, and seeing them grow up is the best thing I ever did. But those early few months with my firstborn, I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. It was the worst thing I've ever done, and the only person I want to give a shout out to, I'm hoping she's listening, is my wife, because she was, instead of me being the rock, she was the rock, and she held everything together. So kudos to her. She gave birth and she was the one keeping everyone going.
It was amazing. You had a second one after that experience.
I can't believe I was crazy enough to do it, but you know what? It was the only thing I'd say to, if there's any dads out there listening and you're holding your newborn right now thinking, why on earth have I done it to myself, and why has this guy on the phone had a second? Because when I had my second, they say the phases that you wish you had your first child second, if that makes sense. Because when my second was born, I knew what was coming. I knew I wasn't going to be sleeping. I knew that they cry. I know that I'm going to have to change loads of nappies and that life's just going to be a bit chaotic. But the second time round, I loved it so much more than my first. And when my second was there, I loved every minute of it. Compared to my first, I hated it. But I just knew what to expect.
What role on the third?
No, I've got too much information, but my vasectomy's booked in for next Saturday.
I just clenched my knees together. Tom, thank you very much. Kieran, I mean, that was, in a way, I think Tom is so representative of many dads. But are there fathers groups or lads groups, as he calls them, around the country that, obviously not in New Cross, but...
There are plenty of dads groups where they meet up on Saturdays and Sundays and they do things with children. They tend to be quite wide age ranges. They reach 10, 20, 30 dads a week. And it's a great place. If you're okay and it maintains your wellness, that's brilliant. Sometimes they're not easy for dads who are struggling to go to open up. And that's a real difficulty.
But I suspect that if you're in a group of 20 other guys... whatever you're going through, one of the others will have probably gone through it or is going through it. So at least you've got a sort of support mechanism there.
Absolutely. It's a really great place for us as we do one-to-one support. We will feed dads into those groups because it's a great place for them to maintain how they are. But often they're not the place that they'll go to open up. It needs to be a professional or somebody who meets them in their own space on their own often and says, how are you doing? What's going on? How's things? That then leads to finding those types of groups.
Well, Tom, you've set a very high bar for everyone else who's going to call in, but we've got a lot of calls coming in, lots of texts. We'll get through as many of them as we can before 9 o'clock. It's 8:33, news headlines on LBC with Tim Daly.
The FBI has confirmed a suspect in the shooting dead of the right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk remains on the run. The podcast host, who had millions of social media followers, was killed at a university event in Utah last night. Downing Street has insisted it wasn't involved in the vetting of Lord Mandelson after it emerged security services raised concerns about his appointment as the British ambassador to Washington, D.C. He's been sacked after leaked emails showed he had a deeper friendship than first believed with Jeffrey Epstein. And the Labour Party has confirmed 2 candidates have met the threshold of support needed to run for the post of deputy leader. Bridget Phillipson and Lucy Powell have made it on to the final shortlist. LBC weather, wet and windy in the far northwest of the UK overnight, clear particularly in the east with a low of around 8 degrees.
This is LBC. This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:35. Andrea Leadsom is here, former Conservative Cabinet Minister. Her new charity is called the 1001 Critical Days Foundation. Kieran Anders is here from the Father's Mental Health Focused charity Dad Matters UK. Briefly, Andrea, you were telling me about the digital red book in the break there, which sounds terribly exciting.
Thanks, Iain. Well, I'm just reflecting on what Tom was saying and how he felt, the world was completely chaotic. He didn't know where to go for help for himself. He really struggled. And Kieran and I have been talking a lot about how actually, unfortunately, there would be more support available for dads if anybody knew that they were struggling and who they were. And of course, the system, when you have your red book for your gorgeous baby, it's still paper-based and it records the baby's, weight, etc. But it doesn't record anything about mum or dad. And actually, the idea of a digital red book is that would change all of that. So it could record, for example, previous losses, miscarriages. It could record dad's mental state, if dad's coping very well, if mum's coping very well, any sort of interventions, regarding the birth and so on. But that would then be digital so that your whole health profession, your GP, your midwife, your health visitor could all be there to help both parents. And it would actually be very achievable. As Start for Life Minister, that was the thing I was trying to get through. I know it was in Labour's manifesto, and I just really hope that Wes Streeting, if you are listening, you need to get on with that.
Which he does sometimes.
Yeah, I don't blame him. It's
right.
A good
Let's
programme.
go to another caller, Joe, who's a new caller in Tamworth. Hello, Joe.
Hi there. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Excellent. So I'm a father, first time. She's currently 14 weeks and absolutely beautiful, absolutely fantastic. My job is in the military, so I was away for the whole of my wife's pregnancy up until 2 weeks before. And then I managed to take a post-operational tour leave on top of paternity leave. So coming back in, for me, I was like going through books. I've read everything. I'm prepped for it. I'm getting there. Don't worry. And it's just nothing like anyone ever imagines. I
guess that must be quite unusual to not be present almost at all during a pregnancy.
To be honest, things like FaceTime and stuff like that sort of recognised. I do get paid a bit better when I'm out on tour, so it does help towards maternity pay. So it's the swings and roundabouts that you take. But the point that I'm getting to is when I came back in and sort of like sat in the hospital with my wife, a lot of the nurses, I think, sort of subconsciously were more talking to my wife. So I remember sitting there with a notepad and pen, as I do, as every squaddie does, sits there writing all the notes down, and she turned to my wife and she said, "Is he listening to us?" And I was like, "Hold on a minute, I'm in the room." Like, what? You know,
So weird.
I think it's completely subconscious, but I think that, you know, the training that goes around that is obviously a lot more difficult. But then also on top of that, taking like this sort of extended leave, this 14 weeks that I was, you know, absolutely gifted enough to have, absolutely fantastic. I felt so alone, despite the fact we had this perfect baby, this perfect C-section birth. Everything all went to plan, but I didn't realise how much I needed the boys' club. And, you know, to go back into work, like, apologies, ladies, I do understand there are ladies in the army, but to go back to the biggest boys' club in the UK and for 5 blokes to jump on me and say, "How was it? What's she like? Show me a picture. Let's get down the pub. You know, I bet you've not slept very well for like 5 days. Let me sort that out for you. Let me grab you a brew." It is so important. So I cannot say, like, absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing to hear that there are groups that are coming up, and it's fantastic that LBC are actually talking about this.
And could you talk to your partner, I don't know if she's your wife, about how you were feeling at the time?
Again, it's stoking the engine as she's driving the ship. I'm the one that's sort of going out to work. I'm the one that's picking up the fresh fruit because she can't stand up because it's, you know, she's C-section, she's 6 weeks without driving, and it's like it's taking that responsibility, which I'm so proud to have. But at the same time, like you mentioned earlier, it's my partner's story, it's Joanne's story. It's not my story, and that is exactly how I felt. So I'm so keen to listen to you at the minute, and I was so excited when you started talking about it, and because going back into work and other people saying I experienced this and I had that, and like you're talking about the testosterone drop, I had absolutely no clue, and it makes so much sense, and like it's just a jigsaw falling into place. It really is.
It's a story we hear all the time. You know, dads don't know all of this stuff, and then when they find out, it all slots into place. I think sometimes it's really refreshing hearing you speak about it, because there's dads out there that are in pregnancy that are going to feel the way that you felt, and that are going to have the same situations come up for them. And hearing that other dads are going through it is a massive part of that. It's educationally, it's amazing. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, thank you so much. I'm going to pop onto your website and, you know, donate a bit of money, because it's absolutely fantastic cause. And lads, like anyone that's listening, go on, speak out, lads. Like that's what we're here for.
Amazing.
All for one.
Well,
right.
If ever I had a doubt that this phone-in was worth doing, well, I didn't actually, but because Andrew would have killed me. But I mean, Joe, what a fantastic call, and thank you so much. And the website is 1010criticaldays.com.
1001.
Oh, is it 10? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Let's do that again. 1001, like figures, not words. criticaldays.com. And I'm sure that you'd be delighted to receive lots of donations, because presumably that's how. I mean, do you get sort of grant funding at all?
No. We are going to philanthropists. Actually, there are so many people who really think this is all there is. You know, get this right, and you change society for the better. And it's so true. And Joe, I was met a young dad recently who'd sadly lost his legs in the military, and he was talking about how he'd accompanied his partner to all of the antenatal checks, and he was always left at the door. Unbelievable. I mean,
left
that's
at
just
the door.
Rude. Yes. And then when the baby was born, she wasn't well, and he was handed the baby and told, "There you go." And he was like, "Oh, what should I do with this then?" I mean, it's not even slightly funny, but you're just not alone, Joe. It is overwhelming for everybody. But the one thing I do take issue with, you said it's not your story, it's her story. It is your story. It's both of your story. You know, babies need their mum and their dad absolutely equally, and so you should feel it's your story too.
Right, let's move on to Mark, who's another new caller in Shrewsbury. Hello, Mark.
Hi, evening all. For me, it's just a bit of a question. So I think it's always good to start at the start, as I say. And my firstborn was a routine cesarean, so that's fine. Born at 1 o'clock. And for me, it's a bit of a question to see whether things can change. Is that At 8:30, I was very, not forcibly, but told I literally had 1 or 2 minutes, say my goodbyes, and off you pop. So my boy was 7 hours old, and I was told to leave, and my wife was then obviously going to deal with everything overnight. I drove home to an empty house, very lonely. It was only a 20-minute drive, but I was basically in tears for the whole time, a mixture of emotions. But I thought, well, why is that? Why are we as a father sent home when we can support, we can help, we can, my wife obviously been through that operation. I could have lifted her up, I could have got her a drink, I could have supported her while she supported the baby, if that makes sense. It doesn't, everyone says about the NHS sort of struggling and not being able to have the people power. And I just find that as a strange thing. From the very, very beginning, we're ushered out and told we can't stay and we can't be there. So then I was very lonely. And then luckily, so a piece of advice to any new sort of fathers out there is, when that happens, try and have somebody or somewhere to go so you're not alone. So I got into an empty house and I was just sat there lonely, quiet, thinking, what's happening? Are they both okay? And I just think that's a shame that it starts off like that.
Did you feed that back to the hospital?
Yes, and I was just told that's policy or procedure.
Yeah. Computer says no.
Yeah. It's really, really challenging. I think
it is. It's a shame, isn't it?
There's I had the same thing or similar thing 25 years ago when I had my first. Where
were you a child?
I was 21-ish. So my daughter was born, and it was thank you. And there was visiting time, so I could be there in the afternoon and then in the evening, but I couldn't be there the rest of the time. And I got home, felt lonely, sat up, and I didn't sleep. I just sat up watching TV until the early hours, and then went back as soon as I could the next day. When my second was born, it had changed, and it was all day, so I could go at 8 in the morning and leave at 8 at night. But again, at night I was going home, and they stayed in for 3 or 4 nights each time. So I had 3 or 4 nights on my own. And it eats into your paternity leave as well. I'm off work at that point. I can't, but I'm not there at night. I can't support my partner. I can't do the wake ups. It was frustrating. It was depressing. I think now there's a much more of an emphasis on getting dads involved. But each hospital, each trust, very different.
But why isn't there this knowledge within the hospital about sort of the fact that fathers can contribute stuff as well as, I mean, I get it. Sometimes if you're in a small room, you don't want too many people there, but it's the father that's the first one to be kicked out.
It's often about estates in the NHS. They have wards with 4 or 5 or 6 mums on. And then having the same amount of dads in a small space is difficult. Having a space for dads to sleep, having the chairs, the special chair beds, having spaces for them to shower, having opportunities to find things to eat. Like it's all a lot of things that they have to think about. The best thing to do is to speak to your neonatal and maternity voices partnership in your local area. In England, they are in every trust, I think, and they'll feed that back into maternity, and they'll challenge and try to influence that. But most midwives, they understand how important dads are. They're really good at it. At Dad Matters, in the last 8 years, we've trained 15,000 professionals, including quite a lot of midwives. We do lectures in universities to help them to understand the role that dads play, how important it is that it starts as early as possible as well.
I'm getting so many texts coming in saying, well, what you're talking about, you're talking about me.
Yeah.
Here's one from Gray who says, this programme about dads has affected me so much. I'm not brave enough to dial in. Thank you so much. I'm weeping listening. I mean, again, I wasn't sure I was expecting that, but it just shows that there are so many people out there who've had sort of maybe traumatic experiences, lonely experiences, and inevitably, if you go through something like that, you are going to feel alone. But I guess the whole point, or one of the main aims of Andrea's foundation, is to try and sort of mitigate this in some way.
Try and change the world.
Yeah, well, why not?
Absolutely, that's what we're going to do.
That's what you were trying to do in politics.
Yeah, now I'm going to have another go outside politics.
Right,
going to succeed this time.
I think you're underselling yourself there. Right, we'll take some more of your calls in just a few moments. It's 8:48.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
The 31-year-old conservative activist Charlie Kirk was speaking at a campus event at Utah Valley University yesterday afternoon when he was shot in the neck. Bringing to the conversation the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. Let me start by offering my condolences. How long had you known him and what sort of bloke was he?
I'd known Charlie for 10 years. When I first met him, I was rather astonished that this guy of 21 had already set up his own organisation and was touring American universities. He was somebody that I saw a lot of, somebody whose radio shows I appeared on, somebody I campaigned with. I knew him very, very well, so I sort of really reacted with horror.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio, on Global Player and the LBC app. Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:51. Now, you can find out more about the work which the 1001 Critical Days Foundation is doing by going to 1001criticaldays.com, while if you're in the Greater Manchester area, you can contact Kieran and the rest of the team at Dad Matters by going to dadmatters.org.uk. Now, Andrea, you've been telling me about some other resources which are available.
Yeah, very specifically that the NHS website has a postcode finder for the Family Hub in your area, and the Family Hub is a one-stop shop where you should be able to get information, help, advice, lots of different groups and classes. You can meet lots of other parents and so on, so it's really worth taking a look at that.
We have Dad Matters now in lots of different places in the country, around 23 other areas.
And they're all listed on your website?
Yeah, so if you go to the website, you can find through the map, yeah.
Great. And it sounds as if you're going to have a few more of those soon.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Now, here's a text from Kathy. I do get why you're doing this phone-in, but in capital letters. As a mum of 5, for once, men just need to make this not about them. Sorry, says Kathy.
You see, I think that's the problem, that men make it about their partners, which is why they end up struggling and not finding the right support. And we don't talk about it in groups that we go to as men. It tends to be distractions. So if we play football, we don't really talk about being a dad at our football groups. We tend to talk about football or social things. So we need to talk more about it. So
it's a sore point with me, because I was supposed to be interviewing Graham Potter, the West Ham manager, today, but because of the wretched RMT strike, he couldn't get to the venue, so I never got to do it. So you've scratched an itch there.
I'm sorry about that.
That's the right expression. Right, let's go to Chris in Wigan. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Iain.
What would you like to say?
I lost my son 20 years ago, very shortly after he was born, and I had absolutely no support as the man, as the father. My partner at the time had nurses, doctors running around trying to help her, understandably. But as the man and as the father, I had no support whatsoever, to the extent where a week and a half after I lost my son, I tried to take my own life, and I ended up sectioned for 6 months. Things haven't changed since that time in 20 years. Mental health access for men has declined so much. And I think that last text that you had from the lady who had 5 children, I think that's the exact wrong attitude to have, because men are already pushed so far out in the birth of a child. In the early years of a child, a man is already pushed so far out. When mental health is, you want the dad to be there for years to come for your child, not to be pushed away and turn into a hovel of a human being because he can't get access to support that he needs. I just think, where do we go from here? It's great having all these initiatives, but Andy's Man Club has been set up in Greater Manchester. I don't know about its availability around the UK, but that's the only service that I'm aware of in Greater Manchester that would help. And I've been trying to get help from Greater Manchester Mental Health for the last 5 years after suffering relapses. There's nothing out there.
Well, Kieran, I think you can relate to what Chris is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I lost a daughter 20-something years ago. I really struggled, and I was lucky. I had two people around me that they reached in and they asked me how I was. They helped me to understand what was going on. They helped me to figure out what I needed to do. But I had a few years where it affected my relationships, it affected my work, it affected my health. I really, really struggled. And I think the reason that Dad Matters means so much to me is that my dad and my uncle were the people that reached in. They weren't waiting for me to reach out. They weren't waiting for me to say, I'm not okay. And that's the model we followed. It's really, really difficult. And mental health for men is difficult. Andy's Man Club, they do have a website. You can find your local session. It's a Monday night, 7 o'clock across the country. It's a really great place to go. There are other ones in different localities. There's places like Mentel, Directions for Men, and a few others in different areas. So you can look for them, but it tends to all be charities. There's not a lot of statutory support services. Talking therapies will take referrals, self-referrals usually, but there can be a wait for that. It can be really difficult. In terms of dads, when you have a child under 2, talking therapies tend to have priority access for you to get support. So it's worth referring in because you might get it quicker than you would expect.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that, you know, if you're interested in the best outcomes for babies, then babies need both their parents. They need both their parents to be well. And I'm so, so sorry that you lost your child. That's absolutely heartbreaking and awful. But nevertheless, I do think a lot of the dads who've rung in should actually realise and appreciate that their story is very important too. Their baby will do so much better if they are engaged and healthy and happy. And what I'd say to Kathy is, you know, we could run this whole talk show again talking about mums. I mean, I had postnatal depression with my first son. I absolutely know how helpless and hopeless it makes you. But it doesn't mean that, therefore, it should only be about mums. And so tonight we particularly wanted to highlight this absolutely shocking statistic of 7 times more suicide by dads with a baby under 2 than by mums. And, you know, I think that shows that there is something that's not working. And so recording plus treatment, I think, is something we should be calling for.
Now, the suicide prevention charity Andy's Man Club, which Kieran mentioned, is also one of the small charities which we've supported in the past through our own charity, Globals Make Some Noise, and their website is andysmanclub.co.uk. Chris, thank you so much for your call. Charlie says, what's on the radio really hits home. My family nearly lost me to postnatal depression. We had a nightmare with feeding, and the lack of sleep and lack of support literally nearly killed me. I planned to take my own life, and it was only my friend's kids and wife that saved my life. The support from the NHS was non-existent, even after weeks and weeks of waiting, and the shame of feeling like a burden on my family was a tough spiral to get out of. I was very lucky, and I'm lucky to be well now with 2 kids I love. So much more needs to be done for new dads, so thank you for covering it. Listen, we're nearly at the end of the hour, but I don't want to go without speaking to Rupert in Essendon. Rupert, we're up against the clock a bit, so if you can be quick, I'd be really grateful.
I'll try to be quick, yeah. I had a situation with my daughter, who's 19 years old. She was due to be born on the 25th of December. So we had, for Christmas, as you had, we weren't drinking, of course, went to hospital. Everybody was nice and merry, as you would expect. And the doctor said, go home, you're not ready yet. And we live in the middle of nowhere. So I took her home, and Olivia turned up on the bed. I phoned the hospital. They said phone 999. 999 were fantastic. They talked me through it, and she arrived on the bed. No gas in there, no epidurals, anything like that. And it was a wonderful experience. But my wife has always told everybody that she did all the work. She went through the pain and everything. I was just a sort of subsidiary, but emotionally, I found that really, really tough. And very sadly, 5 years ago, just on the day of lockdown and COVID, we parted. So I think that I found the emotional side of delivering a baby when you've got nobody around quite difficult to cope with, and emotionally it's been really quite tough.
Very quickly, Kieran.
Yeah, it's something we hear a lot, is that trauma that dads experience, witnessing your partner, your baby, going through something that might result in them losing their life, and seeing things that might just be run-of-the-mill to the professionals, but to you, seeing blood, seeing your partner in pain, that can be really traumatic. And not being able to speak to your partner about it, and then not having anybody else ask you how you are afterwards, that can be really difficult. Totally understand that.
Well, before we move on from this important subject, if anything you've heard over the past hour has left you wanting to talk to somebody about what you're thinking or how you're feeling, please don't forget that you can always talk to the Samaritans. It's totally free, 24 hours a day. You can phone them on 116 123. That's 116 123. Or you can email Joe, that's J-O, @samaritans.org. Well, if ever I doubted that LBC did public service broadcasting, I think we've proved it over the last hour. So Andrea Leadsom and Kieran Anders, thank you so much for joining us on LBC. And we will do this again, I promise, because I think this men's mental health is one of the most ignored subjects, I think, and we will come back to it. But in the next hour, we're going to go back to what I love, politics. We're going to be talking about the sacking, for it was a sacking, of Peter Mandelson, our ambassador to the US. Somebody who I actually think was doing a really good job as ambassador. But, Andrea's looking at me askance, but, and there are lots of buts here, he had to go, didn't he? But what does this say about the Prime Minister's political judgment? Because Aggie Chambray was telling me earlier that she's been told by various Labour MPs that Keir Starmer is effectively being put on a watch now because people don't believe he's got the political acumen to win them the next election. So what does Peter Mandelson's resignation say about Keir Starmer?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, there are warnings Washington could act against foreign citizens, praising, rationalising or making light of the killing of the Conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The Deputy Secretary of State